Next up on the stage here, though, discussing how smart contracts could be the end game for cross-chain execution, please welcome the co-founder of BrahmaFi, Alessandro Tenconi.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'll wait for my slide deck to come up. So in the meantime, how many of you are using a safe for general transactions for your on-chain activity? One hand? Two hands? No? Three? OK. There must be more people using a safe in here, right? Four. Who doesn't use it for multi-sig of a DAO or, let's say, general operation? Who uses it to do stuff in DeFi, like swapping, lending? One, two hands. Finn, you don't count. One hand. OK, so what we're talking today about is execution. OK, so on-chain execution today, it's very slow. It's definitely still broken and inefficient. And especially more chains are coming out with L2s, L3s. And therefore, it's getting harder and harder to just execute on-chain in an efficient way. EOAs are not the end solution for executing on-chain. We know that they have certain limitations. They are clearly great at being integrated and connect to every dApp, but they have no upgradability. Their security model is not great. And also, they have zero programmability, correct? So you cannot try to batch transactions together. You cannot try to do complex operation in a better way. So EOAs are not going to be the future of execution. And these are the problems that we have with EOAs, or in general with execution on chain, correct? We have all of these different chains, all of the different apps. They all don't talk to each other perfectly, and the execution between each of them is slow. Imagine that there's so many good primitives being built on chains, so many protocols, but nobody's focusing on making execution amazing between these chains and between these protocols. Crypto should work coherently, correct? Like composability, you should be able to start on a chain, start on a dApp, and keep executing and flow to the next chain and dApp, and ideally don't have to sign 6 times in the process, correct? You should be able to sign once and get it all done. So that's what smart accounts are amazing at, right? And today we're talking about that, essentially. Why are smart accounts potentially the cross-chain execution endgame, where you have many chains, many things to use, and smart accounts are going to power most of it. I'm Alessandro, as you already know. And let's look at smart wallets, since we are at a smart account conference. Smart accounts are great at certain things. They are amazing for programmability, correct? You can abstract a lot of things for the user, gas management. The previous speaker was talking about passkeys, so different security method, multi-sig. What they're not great is executing on-chain, which means connecting this smart account to a dApp, performing a transaction. There are differences in how you would connect to a dApp with EOAs. And a lot of people go back to EOAs because they're just simple. Like your MetaMask will always connect to a dApp, and the signature will always be supported. Unfortunately, smart accounts were not there yet. So it's very important that execution improves, because the benefits of smart accounts are huge for execution. Again, 7 operations, sign them all in one go. That is a big unlock for the execution. And how do we make smart accounts actually good for execution and make them the end game? It's really important that the user interface that the user can use and how they connect to dApps and the fluidity of it is married with execution. And when I say execution is, account abstraction, relayers, all of that part of the execution is really important to make sure that things the user do actually get done on-chain. And these are the things that we need to solve with smart accounts. We need to make the execution programmable, correct? If I want to execute a transaction when the gas is low, if I want to automatically exit a lending position or whatever position, I should be able to do it in the future because SAFE supports this logic, correct? And make sure that what the user is trying to do is very visible on your interface, correct? If a user starts to do action, but you don't show them what they're doing, you don't let them understand the action they're doing, and you don't treat the transaction in the right way, you're not going to give a great execution experience. And the other thing is security. SAFE is amazing at security, it's the golden standard. So how do we make users use smart accounts without feeling like they're using a more complex solution, correct? So passkeys are a way. We've built a lot of solutions at Brahma that are only for the pro users, like transaction policies, sub-accounts. But the normal users will not see this. Ideally, the normal users will just set up a safe with their passkeys, one on their phone, and basically be able to sign and be able to recover this over time. That's what it's all about. You cannot do this on an EOA, so it's very important that the user understands how good this can be with proper interface. And cross-chain compatibility, because we're talking about cross-chain, now you have smart accounts with obviously different address across chain unless you ensure that it is the same. You have bridges that don't support smart accounts because there is, again, a different output address. So bridging and using multi-chain with a smart account is very hard. Whenever there's an emerging chain like Blast or whatever chain you want to use, the dApps are not supporting smart account out of the box. So there's a lot of work that smart accounts have to do in cross-chain compatibility. But we think the way you show the user why they should use a smart account is by showing them the benefit in the interface. So what we do is we basically build a programmable interface for execution, which just means that we make it very easy for people to execute on chain. We do this from the degen retail that wants to farm some things all the way up to the liquid funds and the treasuries that needs to do complex things. And it doesn't matter. The important thing is that you build one tool that is able to let them do a variety of things in a much better way at execution. And we look at how that looks like. So first of all, you need to put different pieces together, right? You have safe in the account stack at the bottom, which is the smart wallet that users use. But how do you connect to dApps? How do you broadcast a transaction? How do you relay it? How do you batch transactions together, correct? A user wants to do a swap, which involves an approval, a swap, and then they want to deposit in a liquidity pool, which needs another approval and a deposit. So these are 4 normal transactions that the user would have to sign on a safe or on an EOA. We try bring them all together and batch them in a single operation the user has to sign. So how it looks today, the status quo is that whenever you execute something on chain, you start a position, right? You have an approval, you have to sign it, you have to wait for the chain to respond back and validate it, then you start the supply, then you wait, then you start another approval, then you start the borrow, then you wait, and then maybe one of them fails, you retry it with a different gas or different RPC, and then you can proceed to your intended place, which is just getting that DeFi position done. What we did today at Brahma is that on a single chain, you're able to do all of these actions and simulate them in a very easy way from your application. You just click on approve, we simulate it for you, and we pass it back to the dApp so that the dApp actually will let you proceed with the supply. So you're able to do approve, supply, approve, borrow, approve, stake. And this is what smart accounts are able to do, but they need proper interface for the user to use, to connect to the dApp, to understand what they're signing, and to eventually get to the final transaction, so that everything can happen in one signature. Imagine a fintech app where there are 10 different backend processes going on for the user, but the user still sees one operation to sign, correct? In on-chain world, right now, we're still stuck on every transaction, every step of the way, having to wait for it and having to make sure that it executes before you can go ahead. And that's not the best way. Where we're moving to is that you will be able to start a transaction on a chain, you will add a bridging action to it, and you will also say what you would like to do on the next chain, and just execute it all together in one. And for doing this, it's a very complex endeavor, where you have to not only have a good interface where the user can connect to the dApps and tell you what they want to do, which means how can the user explain their intents, but they also have to be able to set up a bridging transaction in the middle and be able to sign all of this data for then Brahma at the execution level to handle the execution for them. So this is what the future should look like. Ideally, a user comes and say, I see that Base has very low USDC interest, so I want to borrow USDC on Base, and I want to go and farm it on Berachain, correct? That's what people would do. They would have to sign all of the steps of the way until they get to the bridge and Berachain, and then eventually sign there. We instead let them build this whole transaction in one place, thanks to essentially simulating the state of this transaction. And we enable it to sign in one go, and then we will take care of the time that it takes for that transaction to complete. Meaning, when the bridging is completed, start the rest of the transaction the user signed on the chain B. But this is what the future of execution should look like, and we see this already working very well with multi-sig owners funds that are used to sign 10 transactions to get a DeFi position with multi-sig at every step of the way, approve, supply, and instead now they can sign one time and just get it all sorted. And this is how safe should look like. This is meant to be a video. If it plays, I don't think it will play because it's a PDF now, so it was a video of the interface to show you how it works when you build a transaction across many dApps. I will be able to show you at the booth if you want. I'm outside there the whole day. But the other part of cross-chain is being able to execute from any chain you're on, correct? What the new narrative is called, chain abstraction. Again, you need to allow the user not to have to change their network every time to start a transaction. You have to enable them to see all of their position in one go, see all of their assets, and start a position or a transaction on the next chain. And what does the final journey to actually use smart accounts for cross-chain execution or chain abstraction look like? Is that you first have to make the executions move on one chain, which is what we focus on, and we think we're getting pretty good at it, and which means execute faster on any dApp, be able to automate execution over time, something like asking for a swap to execute over 10 hours instead of just once. And you will be able to sign once and let it run. Same goes for connecting to multiple dApps, preparing a single strategy, signing it once with your multi-sig owners. And then you have to connect the chains and the dApps together seamlessly. So if I want to start doing something on a chain A, but then I want to move to the chain B to do something else, it also has to be a smooth process, correct? I have to be easily opening the dApps, easily they have to work, right? And all of the signature has to be explained to me, correct? I'm signing this big position. This is what is changing in my wallet. That's the next thing we're focusing on. The third step, which is important, I think, for the next God knows how many years, is that every key pool of liquidity is still on CeFi, okay? Centralized exchanges have most of the retail users coming in because they're very easy to set up, they're very cheap to use, and they're intuitive. So how do we make people flow from CeFi to DeFi? You have to integrate CeFi in the mix so that people can easily on-ramp from their sexes to DeFi, which means don't make them top up gas, help them relaying the transaction, don't make them set up an RPC, don't make them choose which RPC to sign, MEV protection and understanding it, that's not gonna cut it, correct? So once you have solved this and you made executions move on one chain, step 3 already starts making sense. So integrate sexes, make the on-ramp from sexes to DeFi very easily, and then make them do transaction very smoothly. One signature, 5 operations, they don't need to actually wait and figure out all the processes. And yeah, and then you end up with the liquidity that really can flow between chains, DeFi, and between each of the chains because the user is able to load all the chains in one go, in this case EVM chains in our case, and you're able to start a transaction somewhere, end it somewhere else. We will take care of simulating it all for you and make sure that you understand what you're signing, correct? So this involves a lot, unfortunately, a lot of back-end operation to understand what people are signing on which contract. But for the user, it's very intuitive. So if the video would have played, I would have showed you. But again, I'm able to show you outside if you want. But essentially, we think that smart accounts are the perfect tool for execution, right? The best way to add security, upgradability to your wallet and to your on-chain operation as a new retail coming on, or a fund or a professional asset manager. But at the state of today, at the interface stack and the execution part, it just doesn't cut it. It's not good enough. And a lot of work has to be done to basically connect what the user wants to do, intents, with proper understanding of the intent and executing it in the best way with the user in a self-custodial manner, which is the most important thing. I think, yeah, that's it. If you have any questions, you can ask it. I think we have a bit of time. And yeah.
That was that hand.
Hi. You talked a lot about multi-cores cross different chains as packed transaction. How do you deal with atomicity between chains? Yeah, if we can ensure that or any workaround.
I can't show it here, but imagine that the most important and the hardest part of a cross-chain transaction, let's call it in this case, is that the multi-call A will execute atomically. Then you will have a bridging, which is non-atomic, sometimes 20 minutes with CCIP, and then you have an atomic multi-call on the chain B, correct? So what's important is that we're able to maintain the state of two chains synced, and most importantly, the state of the messaging between the two chains, correct? So you add some conditionality. Once the bridging executes, right? Once the bridging transaction is fully relayed on chain B, I now execute the multi-call on chain B. And you can only do this if you build a multi-chain relayer, correct? That is able to basically talk to each other across the two chains, and that's what we built at Brahma initially, just allow you to use Blast by itself, and you're safe on Ethereum. But when you connect them together, that relayer, that execution stack behind the hood, it's super important because the user will sign one big operation with two multi-calls and the bridging messaging, and there is a condition in between. If this doesn't work, obviously you cannot do the last step. But it's not an easy thing to solve for sure. And it's not an easy thing, sorry, for the user to convey to you if you don't give them a very easy interface for them to click around and show you what they want to do. Because we have to understand what they want to do. The whole talk about solvers and intents makes a ton of sense, but you have to find solvers that actually map those protocols that users want to use, correct? If a user wants to do 5 operation on new Barachain protocol and no solvers actually map these protocols and have liquidity there, there's not going to be a solving path. So a multi-call makes a lot more sense. We will integrate intents only when there's enough liquidity for the operation that people want to do.